Acclaimed blogger and author Pam Penick hit the road across the state's highways and byways to connect us all through the people who cultivate their passions. She joins us today for a look at the stories and what inspired her latest book, Gardens of Texas. Pam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, well, thank you so much. I'm excited to talk about this. But let's back up a little bit and start about how did you get into blogging and social media and your focus on your interest in gardening?
It really started with Tom Spencer. I was reading his blog, Soul of the Garden, in the early 2000s and loved seeing what he was planting in his Austin garden and the design decisions that he was making, and it really inspired me as a new gardener. And I was reading a few other blogs, and I just thought, I need to join this conversation. And so I started my blog Digging in 2006 to start sharing about my garden, and it became a creative outlet.
You've done two other books, Long Gone and The Water-Saving Garden.
Right.
What did you want to focus on this time?
Those books were, how-tos for a problem that I saw people wrestling with during the drought of 2011, which was converting traditional water-thirsty lawns into water-wise gardens. Even after all these years, I still wasn't seeing Texas gardens well represented in gardening books and gardening magazines that I love to read. And the second frustration was also a personal frustration because I felt like I was struggling in my own garden with the weather patterns that we're now seeing, these extreme weather events from snowpocalypse to, drought and heat, and all the hard-won gardening knowledge that I felt like I had acquired, I was suddenly starting to question some of it. Like I didn't know anymore for sure which plants would survive the winter or make it through the summer. And I knew that other gardening friends that I talk with regularly were having these same struggles. And so I figured everybody across the state was having those same questions, and find out what motivates them to keep going, why they're excited about gardening, what their gardening passion is. And that's what came together for the book, to finally give Texas the gardening representation in book form that I knew that we deserved.
Excellent, and it's a big state, so there should be a lot of garden to talk about.
Yeah, it was a journey across. I mean, I drove 6,000 miles across the state to create the book.
Why do you feel it's so important to talk about or to create this community or share this larger community of gardeners?
Gardening is kind of a solitary act for most people, but we get so much inspiration from shows like Central Texas Gardener and from talking to other gardeners and learning what they're doing successfully and then sharing what we know with people. There's inspiration and knowledge to be shared.
Well, let's talk about your book, Gardens of Texas. How did you go about selecting these gardens?
There are so many great gardens, and there were so many generous gardeners willing to share them. My goal was to have at least 5 gardens from across 5 broad regions of the state. So I did a lot of traveling to meet gardeners, and I ended up with 27 gardens in the book. And I was kind of going from 3 criteria for looking for the gardens that I would ultimately select. One was, beauty and interest. Secondly, I wanted to choose gardens that had, a unique story to tell, either about how the garden began or how they were adapting to climate patterns, and something that would resonate with me and that I thought would resonate with readers. And then the third criteria was just I wanted to really represent the diversity that I was seeing across Texas, whether that was garden style or reasons that people got into gardening, because there are so many reasons that people get into gardening. There's so many different styles of gardens, and I just wanted to do my best to represent that.
And did you ever come into a garden that was deemed finished?
Oh gosh, no, I don't know if I would ever, if anybody would ever claim that. No, it's always like the beginning when you're gardening. It's the beginning every single year.
Well, let's talk about a few of these. And I want to make sure all of these are verified Central Texas Gardener fans, correct?
Of course they are.
Of course they are. Okay, just want to get that make sure that was really important. So in Central Texas, you went to Ruthie Burris's garden.
Right.
What's that?
Ruthie's garden, she's on the west side of town, and her garden is flowery and beautiful. She's got a wildflower meadow in the front, and then more traditional perennial garden in the back. She uses a lot of native plants. But what really compelled me, aside from the beauty of her garden, was the story that she had to tell. She moved here from Beaumont, and she described that as like a gardening paradise of, like warm winters and plenty of rain. And then she moved to Austin, and she said it was like moving to a place with no soil and no water. And she is passionate about gardening with the climate instead of fighting what she has here and trying to create where she used to live.
Right.
She wants to have a garden that fits here. And the reason why it all matters is, because this is the world we're passing on to our kids and grandkids.
Right.
And that was the great story about her garden that I really loved.
It's probably a common theme amongst gardeners
I think
too,
so.
I'd say.
Yeah.
Well, what about West Texas, Guy and Lisa Fielder?
Yeah, they're in Alpine,
Okay.
and they hired designer Michael Eason to design a native plant garden for them using Chihuahuan desert plants, because that's the region that they live in. They were not gardeners when they hired him, and they just said they had like a bunch of tumbleweeds and some goat head burrs in their
Right.
in their yard beforehand, and he created this really beautiful native plant garden. And they were so astonished to see all the life that came to their yard once this garden was there. I mean, not just the beauty of the plants, which they said they didn't even know these plants existed,
Sure.
but suddenly they had, dragonflies and birds and bees and just pollinators of all kinds. They were just really moved by that, and they wanted to share that with their neighbors and make their garden almost like a public space in the town of Alpine, which I loved.
Yeah, it's a beautiful town, though. I think a lot of people think it's sort of like very austere and dry, and there's not much going on.
But it's not like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, what about South Texas, Linda Peterson's?
Linda Peterson's garden has been a favorite of mine for a long time. She has this cluster of really big live oaks in the center of her garden, and she and her husband built their house made a courtyard wall around those live oaks. And one of those live oaks kind of comes through the wall. She's got a hole cut out. And so the trees is the first thing that you notice. But then around those trees, she's built this kind of silvery, sparkly garden of agaves and blue grama grass and Greg's dahlia and other plants that are really water-wise. It's a gravel garden with no irrigation built into the garden. So anything that she puts in, she hand waters, but it's a very water-wise garden.
What about North Texas, Michael McDowell's garden?
Michael McDowell, he's better known as Plano Prairie Garden.
Oh, yes.
He's on Instagram.
Yes.
I find him so inspiring. He's got this garden that's a great example of what you can do on a pretty strict budget. He started small with his plants. He would go to native plant sales and plant small, and then he would sow a lot of plants from seed to create the garden that he has today, which is a no-lawn prairie garden in this pretty standard suburban Plano neighborhood. So it's really different. And his garden just especially comes to life in the spring and the fall.
Yeah.
In the fall, the liatris burst into bloom, and that's when we photographed it, when all the monarchs on their migration are drawn to those gay feathers. It's just a really special garden.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. And for our last one, East Texas, Mark McKinnon.
Mark McKinnon is a landscape architect in Houston, and he lives in a pretty urban neighborhood on a small lot, and he really shows what you can do even with native plants in a small lot. Like he wanted to create like a refuge from the city and make it more like a camp, he said. And so he planted a lot of trees in his lot, and those are very mature, beautiful trees now. And then he has under that shade-loving ground covers, a lot of natives and other adapted plants. And he's just really pragmatic in his approach to plant what grows well, plant more of that, and then be patient when some sort of extreme weather event comes along that maybe knocks your plants back. Be patient and give them a chance to come back. And he says if you plant the right plants, and especially with native plants, he's found they will come right back.
Right. The photography in here is absolutely beautiful. It's Kenny Braun was your sojourned with you all across the state.
He did.
And really captures some just beautiful images here. And I know he used to work at PBS a long time ago, I'm told. So
yeah, he was amazing.
Last question for you before we got to wrap it up. So this is our 30th year on Central Texas Gardener. We're really excited about it. And over that time, we've covered a lot of design philosophies and strategies and desires. What do you see as some of the big changes that have really come about?
Yeah, 30 years is an awesome accomplishment, so congratulations to Central Texas Gardener. And I mean, it's been an inspiration for me over the years, for sure. And I guess over that time period, because that's really how long I've been gardening too, I've seen an embrace of native plants and water-wise gardening. I mean, people were on board with that in Texas early, but really the droughts and we have really increased that interest.
Well, Pam, thank you so much for coming in and speaking
Thank
with us
you.
today.